It's my pleasure to welcome Janet Sherlock on stage. Janet was the former Chief Digital and Technology Officer at Ralph Lauren, the brand that we all know and love. And she's also on the board of BJ's directors, BJ's board of directors.
Yes.
Grab a seat and let's go. So thank you so much for coming. And you came all the way from
New York.
New York.
Yes, it's my pleasure to be here.
And so while we get started, let's talk about what you do and sort of your role, what it was at Ralph Lauren.
Sure. Well, I think everyone probably knows Ralph Lauren, but it's a fashion house. It's a wonderful brand, and its purpose is to inspire the dream of a better life through authenticity and timeless style. So I think that that's been contributing to its performance as of late. Vijay and I were talking about the all-time stock trading at its all-time high, and how great the business has been. And I'm really proud that I was a part of it for so long. My role when I started there was the Chief Information Officer. I was responsible for the end-to-end technology. But for my last couple of years there, I was the Chief Digital Officer. Leveraging some of my experience with direct-to-consumer and e-commerce, I at some point had run the digital and omnichannel practice at Gartner, and I had run technology and digital for many different companies, Guess, as we talked about before, Carter's, and several others. I was at ExxonMobil and was in the technology area there for many years. But my last role at Ralph Lauren was the digital officer. I was responsible for the global e-commerce business, so over $2 billion of business globally. So it was
I'm sorry, how much? What was?
Over $2 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like two jobs. So it's good.
And it's sort of
very unique.
And in fact, if I remember correctly, Ralph Lauren was very early into the e-commerce business, right?
Very early in the e-commerce business. Yeah, as a matter of fact, his son David Lauren worked with Bill Gates, and they created, they called it merchantainment years ago. But then they had to sunset that. They built on some other platforms. And then when I came in, that's actually one of the first things I did there was replatform all of the e-commerce and took all the different platforms that they were using globally and put them on the same platform. And integrated their omnichannel and their CRM, and we were able to launch e-commerce in over 100 countries in just a couple of years' time. So talk about a flywheel. I know how to make a flywheel work.
No, in fact, after we talked, one of the things I went back to our framework, and it was clear that you were better than most at sort of really spinning that flywheel. In fact, that was one of the titles I played with for our session. But walk us through the business that, like I learned sort of that much more about the business after talking to you, because you always think, because Ralph Lauren is such a powerful icon, you think of it as being sort of couture. I mean, I came to the East Coast, and that was my wardrobe for the first from India. My wardrobe for the first so many years, because that's all everybody at my university wore. So very strong heritage, but it's got that business, which is direct to consumer, but You've also got wholesale and outlets. So how is the business actually divided up?
Sure. So, well, it is a really broad reach. So from even a consumer type, you have the luxury business, which services, it's Purple Label and Collection, if you know the Ralph Label brands. And then there is more of the accessible luxury, which is the Polo brand. There is inspirational luxury in the Lauren brand and in the outlets. So we reach a large breadth of consumers, as well as the broad reach geographically. It's a very, very global company in over 120 countries, represented in over 120 countries. It's also channel lots of channels. There's wholesale business, e-commerce business, retail business, and I mentioned outlet as well. There's shop and shops internationally and some other channels as well. When I started, the business was over 50%. The larger penetration was in wholesale, which was the same when I was at Guess and the same when I was at Carter's. And then we, flipped it and made it so that the penetration of direct to consumer is larger than wholesale. You really want to be able to maintain control and destiny and positioning of your brand, and it's much. While you really want to be accessible from a channel perspective to the consumers and be where they are, you do want to be able to manage your brand in a very consistent way.
Now, you see that across retail in many retail organizations I'm familiar with, even when they are a multi-branded retail, like if they have, like in the Middle East in particular, there's taking out sort of some of the brands that are powerful and moving them out of the department stores into single brand stores. So right. Clearly there's a push towards that. But let's just jump into AI next. You joined the company in 2017.
That's correct.
And one of the things we learned was, even though we're talking about AI so much more today than we were so many years ago, but Ralph Lauren was very much into AI in 2017. You had built a data platform. You had some very interesting applications. Talk about that.
Sure. So I do have to say I had a really good partner with our CEO. So when he started only a couple of weeks before me at Ralph Lauren, and in our first investor day in I think it was 2018, and we created our strategic framework that we used, and we had best-in-class data analytics and AI as part of our framework. So if I really look at it, though, we talk about flywheel and supporting AI throughout the organization. I would have called it like 3 eras of AI in my time at Ralph Lauren, which was the first was the beginning before we had an AI platform, after we had an AI platform, and then after the Gen AI explosion. But even early on, we had something that we called the Analytics Accelerator, which we then changed to AI Accelerator, where we would talk about how we leverage, not just for insights and decision making, but how we could really leverage the company's rich data for operations and for consumer experience as well as for employee experience.
So what were some of the pivotal decisions that you made early on that laid the groundwork for transformation, before generative AI? So, low code platform, I think you insourced some stuff, yep. Governance frameworks.
So, if I really think about the early investments, I'd have to go back to cloud migration. And I normally don't talk about vendors very often, but I will for a second here. We did most of our compute on Microsoft Azure, but our work for analytics was really on AWS. So, some of the early work that we did before we had our own low-code enterprise AI platform was we would use the tools within AWS to do certain things. So, like as an example, we used AWS Comprehend to do natural language processing. So we would look at customer reviews and try to get insights. And when you return something in e-commerce and you put the reason code like, oh, it didn't fit, I didn't like it, too late, whatever it is, and then you have comments you can write. So we would mine those comments because they could really help. You give it to the quality team. There's color fastness, fit issues, some other things, the logistics team. So we were doing that well before the big AI explosion on core AWS tools, and using AWS SageMaker for our forecasting, et cetera. But the issue with that, of course, is you have to use your own engineers to do that, your own data scientists to do that. It can't be democratized to the entire organization. So that was pre AI platform. And the other thing that was going on was that I saw a lot of parts of the organization. So marketing would be an example, or supply chain, where they were hiring their own data scientists, which I didn't have a problem with that. But what I did have a bit of a problem with was the fact that they were building models on third-party platforms. So, marketing would work with their agencies and they would build the segmentation model on somebody else's platform, or supply chain would build models and data would exist on the logistics providers. So between the idea of, and then there were other third-party solutions we were using, whether it was allocation of products into the stores or price optimization or whatever the case was, I started to look around and say, okay, here's what's happening here. And again, this is before Gen AI even. I see platforms kind of just being spread all over the place. I see data being spread all over the place. I see data scientists being hired without necessarily knowing who's responsible for what. And this is when I worked with my head of analytics, and we decided that we were going to pursue a low-code AI platform. So what we did then was we said, everybody's models have to exist on this. So now it takes it so that the models become an asset that can be leveraged across the company. So as an example, if you're merchandising, you want to know the customer segments just as much as the marketing team does, because you want to know, well, how well is denim performing in this segment versus that segment versus this other segment. So it really did help us to be able to coalesce models, data, and be able to have a strategy, the beginnings of a really good strategy for AI.
It's sort of interesting, right? Because on the one hand, you're ahead because you're doing stuff way before your competitors are. But on the other hand, it creates sort of a downstream problem of a little too much, I don't know what the right phrase is, but not as coordinated as you would like.
Yeah, I mean, I would have to say that having that AI platform is what helped us to get coordinated and aligned. And that was at the time that we, and since then, since I've left Ralph Lauren, and I now have an organization structure and design practice, but this was kind of the model that we implemented at Ralph Lauren, and I've helped clients implement it, which is having, I'll refer to it as my CFD model, a center of enablement, which is in technology. So the data, the platform, federated modeling. So nobody knows store operations like store operations does. Nobody knows supply chain like supply chain does. So they had their own data scientists. They built their own models. We would support them from technology. The digital team, my own digital team, would have its own capabilities. And then democratized data, analytics, and ability to create insights. So that model really was the beginning of our flywheel.
And is that a model you would advocate largely, or does it work in some contexts better than others?
It works
everywhere.
Not quite. If you're a technology company, it's a lot different. Even in large enterprises, it does work. It works in medium and smaller. Yeah, so I'd say it works across a lot of industries and across a lot of sizes of enterprises.
Getting back to the specific use cases of AI, I mean, I know you have some really, there's predictive buying, there's styling using generative AI, and the term that I learned from you, pricing by door, e-commerce copy. Tell us about sort of how you started using AI.
Yeah, so I mean, given the flywheel that we had and the modeling being done in a federated way, there was no limit, to use cases and ability to actually execute. But a few of the use cases, you mentioned product copy, and there's a reason I bring this one up, which is for e-commerce product copy. This was our very first production generative AI use case, which was we created the capability of generating the AI copy. It sounds relatively simple, but the thing that we did, I think that was good, that stood above, was it was all incorporated into the technology and into the workflow. So that's, I can't say that we necessarily did that so well in other places. So another example, one of the big things in retail, and not just in retail, it's in manufacturing and hospitality, is labor scheduling and labor modeling. And the labor model that we had, it was a third-party solution and had their traffic forecasting in it. Well, store operations was able to create their own traffic forecasting that was unbelievable. It was really good. The better you can predict who's coming in, the better you can service the customers, right? Well, unfortunately, we didn't actually integrate it back into the system, so it took a while for us to actually get to. So that's the part. Integration is a really big part of being able to leverage AI effectively. But there were a lot of other examples. Working with marketing to generate. This is back to the generative. We're now in the generative AI space. SMS, email, copy. Oh, and the other amazing use cases were on the creative side. So a couple of them were done outside of our AI platform because you can't really do certain creative things inside the AI platform. But our design teams, whether it was logos, graphics, prints, patterns, et cetera, would use, and a lot of times Midjourney, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with that, to help with their ideation and to help with the concepting. It really speeds the development time up significantly. And the idea of it's gonna mute creativity, it did the opposite. It sparks creativity because you're getting added inspiration into, because you provided the initial inspiration, and so that's been a big unlock for speed and creativity. But the other parts of creative are things like when you go to a photo shoot, we would complain in digital saying you shoot everything with a horizontal orientation. The world is all on mobile, so we need more vertical. But now it doesn't matter as much because you can use the different AI tools to, we had on one of our big landing pages, we had this vertical orientation, and you just use AI to create the rest of the content that was cut off with the different orientation. And then as well, we're in the fashion business, so Paul had mentioned visual AI. That's our business. So we really wanted to create that as a capability. Some use cases were a little on the didn't make that much sense. We used visual AI for someone in store ops said, "Oh, it'd be really interesting because we have cameras that actually look at how much the traffic coming in and looks at tries to get age and gender." But why don't we have them look at their bags as they're coming in? That way we'll be able to see. Well, we did a little development on that. And then it was so what? So we had a few of those use cases that really
But you have to try, right?
You got to try them. And the point of it was, Vijay, was we were really trying to build that capability. If you don't have that capability, you can't scan the internet and see, well, how does Chanel's handbags compare to ours? Or who's out there, selling now, of course, our legal team was really good for IP, but when you want to go beyond that and look at things like trends and competitive analysis, if you don't have the capability to do visual recognition and attribution, it's
you see the parallels now between Paul's story and your story, right?
There were a lot of parallels, surprisingly.
Because there's so much visual information out there. And then last night we heard from Turing, that is the one place where these models are still could be much, much better because they're really not good at multimodality right now. So, if you're in that industry, and I can't think of very many that aren't, that would be important. But I'm dying to ask you about Ask Ralph.
Yes. Thanks for your reference to it earlier. Yes.
So this is a styling guide. It's a visual stylist. And like I mentioned, that you've got 55 years of knowledge assets
Right.
there. Think about it, if you were in a manual world, you would never really be able to use that.
Yeah, that is,
And,
yeah.
and now, so where did the idea come from? How does it get used today? Are you familiar with sort of what's going on with that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I worked on that. Going back to the days with Bill Gates long ago, David Lauren wanted to try to do some sort of Ask Ralph with an avatar and some other things. But again, we're Chatham House rules here. But Ralph is very sensitive about his likeness being used and things like that. So we decided on this virtual visual assistant, a styling assistant. And, the example you gave before about wearing white pants after Labor Day, the LLMs are actually pretty good at styling. You can ask them, what should I wear to this? And they'll give good answers. But the unique part about the Ask Ralph is that it did use, we trained it on 55 years worth of digital assets. And it trains in the unique style of Ralph Lauren. So I'm not wearing something that's a good example right now, but it's like a Glen plaid. But you ask an LLM what would go with that, it would probably pick a white shirt, But with the Ralph styling, you might actually pick a striped vest. So it trained in the look and feel of Ralph Lauren. So that was one of the big things. It used the assets, plus they interviewed and took the input from in-store stylists as well as the design team to actually train the models as well. So that was one of the things that separates it and makes it more unique than an LLM. And if you try it, it also produces a lovely dynamic lay-down photography looks. So it'll take, a pair of pants and shoes and socks in a dynamic way based upon your prompt and lay it out as an outfit for you. So it's really well done. I'm really excited about where they're going to take it next. A lot more, I'm sure, personalization and other capabilities.
Actually, when I read that story, because it was in the Wall Street Journal, by the way, one of the things that I thought would be very interesting, because last year we talked about this company that is called Project Runway, and they work with Lionsgate Entertainment to take the storyline from the John Wick franchise or the other franchises that they have and find ways to tell the story, continue the story in new ways. And I was wondering, are there any plans that you're familiar with, at least, where you could use this tool to help design the next generation of product?
Yeah, I mean, yes. And from a storytelling standpoint, if you go on ralphlauren.com, we really do try to tell a story with the rich photography, the outfitting, the way we carousel products and things like that. So to go back to now, I do believe that a lot of the creative teams are using some assistance for some ideation around it. If you followed Ralph Lauren through the years, it's like he has a look that looks like, the English countryside, or he has a look that looks like, maybe it might be Le Mans, or it might be a safari or something like that. We did the outfitting for the movie, oh my gosh, with Robert Redford, Great Gatsby. So, he has these different looks. So I think that I don't really know, but I'm sure that they're probably using AI to help curate what could that next look be,
Right?
And what could that feature be. Paul mentioned the analog to Disney, and I think he talked about it from maybe a corporate structure. But we would always use. We don't view ourselves as an apparel company. We view ourselves as a lifestyle brand, more like Disney. I mean, we want you to going back to that dream of a better life through authenticity and timeless style. We want you to feel like a different person. So I think that storytelling is a big part of the business, and the use of AI is a part of the storytelling.
So I'm going to ask you one last question. We have just a little bit of time for questions, but we've referred to the flywheel multiple times.
Yes.
And what I love about the flywheel is because sort of we have a framework, you have a similar framework using different words. But one of the things I want people to understand is this is not a technology where you just implement a technology. It's it's the talent, it's the new processes, and you guys did it all so well. I mean, you had so. If there's some words of advice that you would want to leave about what are all the levers that you pull to make this happen as success? Because they've announced blowout results and they attribute it directly to, I mean, among other things, of course, you have to have great product, but AI is a very big piece of the success story.
You do Selena's wedding dress, and J-Lo's wedding dress. Unfortunately, that's already over. But yes, and this is right now. I have a lot of clients that I give this exact advice to, which is okay. So the flywheel, my flywheel is very similar to your flywheel, Vijay, and if you start with getting the data right, making sure that you have it accessible, clean, quality data, the technology, which I know people don't want to focus on technology, but I highly encourage. Oh, I wish we had time, but I have a good story about a company that I advised to get a low-code AI platform. Oh, it's a great story, but that drove our flywheel. And then the last but not least is being very clear about who's doing what. Again, we use that CFD model. Even if you don't have that, there's no such thing as a perfect organization structure or model, but be very clear about who's doing what. Otherwise, you're going to end up with conflicting models, conflicting data, conflicting everything, people stepping over each other. And then on top of that, you adopt with processes, governance, culture, and training, and that drives the flywheel. And if you get that flywheel right, it will accelerate performance today and then build your foundation for the future.
Thank you, Janet. We were at the Olympics last year, and it's really moving when you see the team, wearing Team USA outfits. And
I didn't like the ones that, you remember the gloves that had the things? I didn't like those. Do you remember those? Anyway, yeah.
You're more of a fashion detailist than we are, I guess. We're a bunch of techies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Janet.